Let's talk about
20 years old.
let's talk about Backrooms, and then I'll talk about Marjan Satrapi, and then hopefully we can get to Lego stuff. Fugly Schmugly, thank you for the tier 1. Otter Tricks, thank you for the 6 months. All right, so Backrooms. Saw it last night. I will say that the first half I felt was sufficiently stronger, and I was really impressed with the visual imagination that was brought to life through the productions, or through the what's the word? Through the production, like the Backrooms itself being a built set was really, really cool to see. No, I didn't hate it. Let me explain. Did you enjoy the wallpaper? Yes. Shout out to the guy who owns the wallpaper that Kane Parsons asked for a digital rendering of. Okay. So my main issue with Backrooms was the decision that they made pertaining the villain, and how ultimately what started off feeling very thoughtful and philosophically interesting ended up a bit too conventional and a bit too what's the word I'm looking for? I guess franchise feeling for my liking. The buildup led to something visually goofy and turned into a Looney Tunes chase, which, yeah, it was less scary than I thought it would be, but ultimately my issue was how they decided to focus on character villainy, which I think pulled away from the horror of the Backrooms liminal space and the interesting ideas that were explored as to what the Backrooms represent. He spoke well on how he uses the concept as a commentary on urbanization, modern isolation. Yeah, and I thought that was very interesting, especially a guy who was born after 9/11 and kind of what his imagining of 1990 when it takes place was, which I thought was in line with how they thematically explored what the Backrooms are. But still, the back half of the film lost steam for me and started to lose what made it so great in the first half because of decisions that they made with the story. I wish it stayed more psychological, leaned into yellow wallpaper style trauma horror. Yeah. So I think the other thing too is that by focusing on two protagonists, it actually, I think it weakened the story. I think it weakened the story by focusing on two protagonists, because her character to me was not as well thought out due primarily to the fact that her character relied a lot on flashbacks, which was like, okay, I get this. I get what your kind of trauma is here, kind of general, but I just felt that in the second half of the film, there were decisions that were made that detracted away from the strengths of the film. But I overall liked it, and there were things in it that I loved, and that's why decisions that were made in the second half were disappointing, because I thought it weakened what made the film so strong. So you'd say Backrooms or Obsession you preferred? For me, Obsession, because I think Obsession did the opposite of this film, where it starts off more straightforward and then actually ends, actually by the end, is a lot more thoughtful and subversive in what its themes are. Whereas in Backrooms, it was the opposite of that. Now, they're different films. I'm not saying it's like the contrast being that both are thematically the same, but there is a parallel with, I would say, male toxicity. And I don't know. Backrooms is so visually interesting, and I really wanted more exploration of the backrooms and more of that feeling of liminal horror than, I think, kind of a falling back on the protagonist's on the protagonist's psyche, which then went in a direction where I didn't feel made the film stronger and instead made it weaker. That makes sense.
Since he's already making movie history. Remember this name. His new film, Backrooms, is about a furniture salesman who discovers an endless maze of office spaces with something very ominous lurking. We're all trying to figure out, what is it?
No one tells Sam. No, I actually haven't talked to Sam about it, but I think she would agree with what I was saying, because she liked Backrooms, but she did say that there were some things about the film that, granted, you're going from a YouTube series to now a feature-length film, so you are building out the world more and filling in explanatory gaps from the series. But I don't think she would disagree, because her initial, when I asked her how it was, she was like, it was pretty good. But she didn't tell me too much in detail because she didn't want to spoil it. But I'm sure if I were to call her and we were to get into the details on the film. Okay, I was talking about the backgrounds, as Ray said. The Backrooms, and I was watching this.
So it landed the biggest opening ever for an original horror film and made Parsons the youngest director ever to top the box office. Yes. We are raving. The film grew out of a viral YouTube series that he created when he was just 16. That racked up more than 216 million views. Yes, you heard that correctly. We are very happy to say that Kane Parsons joins us live and in color in the studio. We are here just giving you a round of applause and cheering.
Congratulations, man.
Congratulations to you.
Yes.
So
Thanks for having me.
Let's let people get a sense of who you are, because you're working on your computer. You're doing videos on YouTube.
Yep.
Tell us what you were doing and when you started doing this.
Yeah, I mean, for a number of years, I've been teaching myself VFX software, just, by any means necessary, sort of, since I would say like middle school. I had like, hand-me-down laptop that I would kind of like upgrade over time. And it was during the beginning of the pandemic that I started teaching myself the program Blender, which is this free open source 3D software. And that's the tool that I use to this.
He was born after 9/11.
Day, and I just started creating a lot of these like found footage style vignettes where human work, like having like a human in front of a virtual 3D camera is so much. A CG human, you'll run into the uncanny valley fast. So focusing on environment and setting and everything was kind of my niche, and I kept doing that for a number of years, and eventually this series I started, which was an adaptation of this sort of.
You know what I will say though is if I were directing a film and it were my first feature film, and I'm 33, and I had I had the cast that Backrooms has, I would just be shitting myself constantly. Renata Reinsve would be like, "How was that? Do you like that?" I'd be like, "You're perfect." What do I even know? Who even am I? You should be directing me.
Online urban legend Backrooms.
Yes.
It
You
really
should like.
took off.
How am I? I'd be like, how am I doing? Do you have any do you have any notes for me? Gen Z were born into a dying where the horror content is going to be peak for them. Well, as I said, I do find it fascinating that Kane, who was not born in the 90s and has this film, sets the film in 1990, and the Backrooms representing, amongst other things, the kind of half memories that result from nostalgia and from the past. So for someone like Kane Parsons, he was born and is coming of age in a time when, for example, shopping malls are relics of the past. Whereas when I was a kid, shopping malls was where everybody hung out and we would go to the mall all the time. But for him, that is already something that represents a dying society. He was born after the release of the Xbox 360. Oh my God. And that a shopping mall is a deteriorating memory. Kind of sounds like you prefer the YouTube series that has an overarching narrative and explores the backrooms more. That movie feels like a singular story in that universe, but there's a lot more going on beyond it. Or the movie feels like You know what Will said, which I found interesting? He said the Backrooms movie almost feels like a premiere episode in a limited series where the story is complete but also incomplete. It's complete as far as the main characters, but incomplete as far as the world that the Backrooms inhabits. So I almost wonder how this would have been, and I know that there's been talk of it being a series, but I almost wonder how this would be as a series versus as a film, which still, as I said, kind of gives the feeling that at the end it's a little franchisey, but you see Sean Levy saying he wants to do a Star Wars and Backrooms movie. What does that
Off
even
in the
mean?
beginning of 2022, and it was,
And here we are in 2026. But Kate, was it your dream when you were doing the YouTube videos to, quote, be discovered, to go to Hollywood, to become a director? Was that what you were hoping to achieve?
No, not with any specificity. What I was looking to do was probably more of what I was already doing, just hopefully with the dream of.
No, see, I actually felt that when the script started to explain things, when it started to kind of chip away at the opaqueness of the mystery surrounding the Backrooms, is when it started to kind of go a little downhill for me. So ultimately still enjoyed the film, but I just felt like it was one where the first half was just a lot stronger. I think it's the studio won't let me put out a film that doesn't have at least a few answers stuff. I agree. I totally agree. I actually thought it was going to be less because of how people who I've heard critique the film in a way that they didn't really like it. They made it seem as if it was too Lynchian. It was too opaque. It was too, you know, they wanted more answers from it. Felt like the constant super wide shots really hindered Backrooms from feeling creepy, unsettling. And while I thought the color grading was nicely saturated compared to most movies these days, I also felt like it made it less scary, unnerving, etc. Overall, though, it felt like it showed a lot of promise for future stuff from Kane. Yes, there were only a few moments that I felt unsettled. And I'm a little confused by people who found it to be super terrifying. His dad was a big lynch head and decorated an apartment like the Red Room, apparently. Oh, yes. Yes. Somebody said that last stream.
Greater, resources, more production value, being able to, there's like a pathway on YouTube to, sort of accrue more resources with time just there. I do really think of YouTube as like a mean to its own end. Like, I enjoy it for its own sake, and then this project kind of arises as an interesting experiment birthed off of that one.
So one of the things that I was struck by in watching your film is this concept of backrooms and why it's resonated so much with younger members, people of your generation, the idea that they've grown up in a world where they feel that they're trapped in a maze, infinite feeds, infinite content, infinite choices. And here you're sort of giving a personification of that you're trapped in this world that you can't escape. Yep. It looks real, but it might not be real. Is that where you drew the inspiration?
I mean, I think a lot of this comes from, there was this original image that sort of sourced this whole Backrooms concept. I mean, it was very much named that way online back in 2019. And I think there's a notion in that was true there and has always been true with all of the iterations of it, where I think it's very much a reaction to anxieties around a monoculture and sort of, the trend, the industrialized trends that have been, steadily creeping into our lives more and more over the past few decades. And I think it...
Okay, one thing, and this is coming from Will, so I haven't verified outside of him, but he said that he had read a rumor about Mark Duplass's character being in the film because Mark Duplass was brought on by A24, or the main point of him being there was to serve as an advisor and a mentor to Kane Parsons. So this is where the ghost directing comes from. I am willing to believe that it was the case. Mark Duplass was there to make sure that things didn't end up like a fucking disaster. But that's not the same thing as Kane Parsons did not direct this film, to be clear of the difference there. And I think that actually makes sense considering, Mark did say specifically that he did not step in, but I think he was insurance policy. And it makes sense considering his character, because the character kind of felt like, I think we could take this out and it would strengthen the film. But then knowing that Mark Duplass was there as A24's insurance policy, and really the purpose was for him to step in if need be, I'm like, okay. This is where Mark, let's see.
Now, about whether Kane Parsons, at the tender age of 19, actually directed the Backrooms, or whether it was more ghost directed by one of his more experienced producers. I was there. I suspect one of the reasons I was hired is because I mentor a lot of young filmmakers, and they may have thought it'd be good to have someone there who's sensitive to that, and I was prepared to help out. And what happened was, he didn't need any of us. He was intensely prepared. He spent the last 5 years of his life building out one of the most detailed mythologies I've ever been a part of. worked incredibly closely with his crew, particularly his DP, shot design, and was very sensitive and calm and smart in dealing with actors. So for those of you who have all these thoughts, were you there?
What's a DP, director of photography?
Comes from this feeling like we're kind of at a place now in the world where so much of the life that we live, especially, you know, I can very much speak to
Were
this
you
as,
there?
as someone who is 20. You know, it feels like the mechanisms of the world have already kind of shedded their skin and they're kind of wearing a costume of the past a little bit. And so now you're kind of looking at something that is kind of walking and talking and trying to present itself as though it's a place from an earlier time.
And yet it's incredibly bleak because it almost tells me that your generation and younger people feel like there's no exit, just like in the film.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I mean, I think it's very hard to find the way right now. There's a lot of noise. So yeah, I think it's kind of a response to some of those more atomizing effects that come from a.
King, I think you're a grown-ass man in a young man's body.
Slappy
I'm
Joe
trying to
Bob,
figure
Favorite
it out
Prime,
because
Rose's
I'm
Thing
so
with 3.
fascinated
Yes.
listening to him talk, the way he thinks, the way he processes
100%.
things. I mean, when you heard that these numbers, that you at this age had achieved these numbers, I think the budget.
Okay. He is young, but also I feel like the expectation here is that he's acting like Jake Paul. And because he's not acting like Jake Paul, like, I just can't believe you're only 20 years old. Oh my God. You're a man in a child's body. Where, yes, he is well put together and is concise and mature in what he's saying. They're treating him like he's an anomaly because he isn't a chud. Yeah, because he's not clavicular. I fear because so many Gen Z male influencers are like a clavicular. Isn't Jake Paul? Okay, I use Jake Paul as an example. I'm switching to clavicular as the example. That when one comes along, sorry, influencers. Kane Parsons is a YouTuber now turned filmmaker. You know what I'm saying, though, where just the 20-year-old Gen Z guy who is not behaving like a buffoon, Gayle King's like, whoa, how could this be?
I heard was $10 million.
Yeah.
$10 million.
10 million made a
82 million.
that first weekend. How are you processing all of that? What does that mean to you?
Well, I'm not in the finance department, so I don't have to.
Yeah, that's true. The only experience Gayle has with influencers, YouTubers, when she reports on some shit that they've done.
Well, those numbers are good.
I know those
Yes.
numbers are good. I know that means I will be able to be given the reins to do more of this. I know that as I would hope. But other than that, I do think that it's, you know, that's not
And
really the area that I.
That's not what you're focusing on. I get it. You're
No,
focusing
I
on
like
your work.
I like that it has reached so many people, and I think Backrooms was a phenomenon in 2022. I thought that it couldn't really be topped. I thought it would kind of like reach the same level of craze. I was very wrong about that. You can look at the trend data and just see how much more prevalent of a event this is.
The other thing that's interesting is I read that you do not want to embrace AI. That's
Absolutely not.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
Tell us why.
I mean, for me, the whole point of doing what I'm doing, like, art is a way of processing life. That's inherently what it's supposed to be for most people. I don't see the value in like outsourcing any element of that. And when I'm looking at someone else's project, if I see an element of the environment has been like, you know, they use generative fill or whatever to change.
And this is a filmmaker who came from the internet. He got his start on YouTube. He was found because of an alternative to traditional industry. And yet he is saying what Marty Scorsese is not saying.
Something about the scene, even if it just shuts off the part of my brain that wants to know more about that world and wants to look for details, because I would assume if they're willing to make an arbitrary choice there, they could make an arbitrary choice with literally anything.
And he's turning 21 in 2 weeks. Happy birthday to
Congratulations,
you.
man. We're cheering you on. Can't wait to see what you do in Hollywood. It's going to be
Can't wait
great.
to see what you
Kane
do
Parsons,
next.
thank you very much. You can see Backrooms.
Yeah, love what he said there. Love what he said there.
I'd go up to it.
They're so surprised, like we've been eating AI up. I mean, look, this is where when I talk about the generational divide. Now, are there Zoomers who are like AI? Yeah, but seeing a rise in older members of the industry, of the living legends, right? The remaining auteurs that we have really embracing AI and regurgitating the same lines about technology meets storytelling, and it's so exciting, and the possibilities are endless, and filmmaking's a young medium, blah, blah, blah. And then the rejection of that from the A24's youngest director in history, a 20-year-old who became, who was found from his work on YouTube. I think we are going to see more and more of that divide. I feel like alongside the problems with the internet, sometimes you get discerning kids who can use the internet to really enhance their own capabilities through finding great nuance in teachers. It leads to stories like this. Yeah, and I think Kane Parsons is somebody who used YouTube as a way to used YouTube as a way to tell his stories, but does not view all tech as an exciting part of the industry and art of storytelling. He's not the type of YouTuber who's just a piece of shit.
And I'd touch it and be like, holy, my hand goes through it. What happens if my head goes through it? Or maybe better, I'd get a camera and put that through first. Hey, I'm Kane Parsons, and today I'm going to be breaking down a scene from my new film, Backrooms. So the scene opens with, we once again see Clark sleeping inside of his furniture store. We have this lighting set up. We debated what we wanted to do with the lights for the sort of nighttime look of the film, Jeremy Cox and I, the DP. We have like a pretty advanced control system over all of the fluorescent overheads, so we can sort of, play with those, and you can see throughout the film, we flicker them on and off here and there, but here we decided for the night look, we wanted to sort of let these display.
You know what it also feels like? It's like Kane Parsons is at the beginning of his career. Why would he not be wanting to pour his talent as he sets out on this filmmaking path of his? Why would he not want to pour his vision, his ideas, his desires to tell the stories he wants to tell, to explore the themes he wants to explore? Why would he not want to do that on his own? Why would he want to turn to something like AI to do that for him? To delegate it to AI.
On their own separate power supply that's sort of operating separate of the weirdness that's happening in the building.
Big planes are dying are going to make you feel like you just struck gold. So don't even think about going anyplace else. Big waves, just look for the gold.
We have him there, he's watching television. It's up again, and he is going to go storm down to the basement and investigate. Because this has been going on too long, and at this point, it's just got to stop. I want to say he's at the end of his rope, but I think he's got more rope to climb. I think he's kind of climbing in a circle, more so. I think he kind of fell into the bottom of a fishbowl, and he's not really quite getting out. He very much lives in the past. He points to all these events that could have gone differently for him, all of these, times and places that he believes that he gave what he needed to, and it was others or other circumstances that let him down in some way. And so I think he's very much living in sort of a state in which he's not quite understanding that he's, there's freedom to move outside of where he is right now. I think he's feeling quite stuck. I think he's in a very stuck position in life, and I think this is, unfortunately, a pretty average night for him.
His vision is what got him here. Why would he outsource that? Yeah, that's how I feel. Where if I had another opportunity to make a film, you can bet as sure as all hell that I would be the one doing that. Why would I deprive myself, but also the audience who I want to share my story with, and to create something and then send it out there and have people react to it? Why would I want to remove any piece of that from me? Why would I want to take that from myself when I had to fight so fucking hard and work so hard to get that opportunity? I don't understand that.
I care greatly about crafting the sonic landscape. I have been doing it for years on YouTube, and I want this film to be congruent with that. I co-composed with Ado Van Bremen, so we would do most tracks are probably 50-50 us, and then some tracks are all him, some tracks are all me. I think this particular one was all.
Can we get a Backroom series, Watch Night on Stream with Sam? Yes, because I'm sure she would be down to do that again.
We were using a lot of these early 2000s VST synth, like Absinthe and Reactor, and trying to give them a richness that they don't usually have. Take some of these mono sounds and make them something a little bit more rich and airy, sort of like a Silent Hill or Portal sort of quality to it. It's all largely pretty ambient until it doesn't need to be anymore.
Piece of shit.
Also, he made all the music himself for the YouTube series.
For me, music and sound I think of in the same bucket. A lot of the music gets altered quite a bit in the mix, and so just seeing how we're dipping in and out of all these different sonic layers to sort of create a sonic experience that's constantly, I think we never wanted to distract from what we needed to inside the environment itself of when we get to the Backrooms. Here, then our emphasis was mostly just on portraying a true to life soundscape to the store, but the Backrooms is where it gets really specific.
If you saw that light going through the wall, would you go into the back room yourself?
Oh yeah, obviously. If I had not seen, if I was wholly unfamiliar with any of this, I would be a person in a building looking at a building that I'm familiar with. If I was in my own home and there was a crack in the wall that's leading to, I could see a faint light from a space that.
So another thing I will say is that it's always a challenge to create a full length feature out of either a vibe or a successful short film. As we saw with Lights Out, great short film, went absolutely fucking nutso viral. The feature film, not so great, fell flat. So it's a challenge, and I think that challenge is why the reviews on this have been mixed, where some people felt like they got the vibe that they love from the series and whatever other Backrooms, what other Backrooms content they had consumed prior to the film, and others who felt that it failed moving from a more vibe-based YouTube thing to a full film. So I think to kind of go back to one of my points of criticism, I think it was an issue with the character writing, because this film leaned on character to take this from a liminal, creepy vibe to a full feature story, but it also didn't let us spend enough time with the characters. So it placed an importance on the characters, but also we didn't have enough time with them to feel like all the kind of actions were warranted. And I think that's why the first part of the film felt stronger for me, and then second half started to show cracks. It was kind of hard for me to care about the characters, and that is a result of not spending enough time with the characters. So when things were happening on the second half, it felt like, well, how did we get here? Series doesn't focus much on characters. There are characters, but it's less about them. So it's basically Kane's. Well, no, he didn't write the script. It was hold on a second. I think he probably helped, but Willie Loam. No. Hold on. Who is this Backrooms writer? Backrooms. Will Sudik. Will Sudik is who's credited. He didn't write it, but he definitely wrote it. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Kane Parsons was not involved on the script here, but the screenplay is credited to Will Sudik. And I think there were script issues that ultimately resulted in not enough dimension for our characters. So then I think people who also found issues with this felt like things happened and they're like, how did we get here? I think the film captures this raw sense of discovery and wonder I can put aside the characterization because what he's doing visually is so interesting and fresh. I agree. I thought visually it was stunning. It was really, really stunning. I absolutely loved the slow creep in the beginning. I was totally down for it. And I think so I think there's people like you who go, okay, I could kind of set aside my issues with characterization. And I think then there were others who were like, no, it was too apparent, the issues, so it took me out of the overall setting. Angie, thank you for the 17 months.
Should not be in my house.
So for me, I'm like kind of in the middle, I would say, where it was visually intriguing and very fresh feeling, and I really loved the world build out. But I mean, I already said what my issues were. think fans mostly care about seeing the plot elements on screen. Fan service for everyone else to still need strong characters.
Two things I don't do are either move on with my day and go brush my teeth and go to bed. And
I don't know. I can't really speak to fan service because I don't really know
don't
Backrooms.
leave the house because maybe if you knew you were in a horror film, you would go and do that. But in my case, I'd go up to it and I'd touch it and be like, holy, my hand goes through it. What happens if my head goes through it? Or maybe better, I'd get a camera and put that through first. We had reference cameras on either side of the wall viewing the intersection point. So it's kind of an eyeball reference off of those video elements synced up to the plate footage. And then we would, it was just a roto job. And we took a lot of iterations because it's kind of hard to roto someone passing through a surface in 3D space, especially when they're moving somewhat delicately and slowly and making sure the lines don't jitter and whatnot. So, but generally it was, we had the two stages. We had the two sets. We had the basement, and then the first room Clark enters into. They're all in direct continuity to one another. It's all right behind that wall. And we would have a plug that we would remove and put a blue screen on the other side for one side so we could add the wall back in, and then he would fall through, and then we would do the reverse on the other side. And then as soon as he's not interacting with the wall anymore, the plug goes up and it's an actual wall again. I think horror is difficult to put a pin on for me. I have a lot of inspiration.
And I think that he's very adept at building out atmosphere. And in this case, the horror of these liminal spaces. I think it was the narrative elements. And honestly, one reason I believe that he did have control over the script, even though he's not credited as a screenwriter, is because in a way it almost felt like, due to the fact that he is as young as he is, he's limited in understanding adult issues in a way that would more have effectively built those characters and made it feel more personality than like one ascribed character trait. But anyway.
But maybe not necessarily the ones that I would peg as specifically horror.
Do we think that what he does with this film translates to anything outside of Backrooms? I think so. I think, as I said, he's shown a strength in atmospheric horror. Now he's saying right now that he's like, I don't really know much about horror, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
I know, over the years, it's been a lot of stuff from the Portal games, like the Valve properties in general, Half-Life included. Mr. Robot's been a huge influence on the way I do things and the way I sort of present these ideas and this sort of look at loneliness. And same with the film 1 Hour Photo. That's a good one. It's interesting because there's a lot of inspirations that went into the YouTube series, or the series at large, which leans a little more sci-fi techno thriller than this film does. And then this film is kind of deferring to the series for a lot of things. So it's easy to say what inspired the series, but if I tried to bring that up in reference to the film, it might feel a little strange or surprising. mean, I like to see it as the continuation of what already exists. And when I started this project in 2022, narratively I knew what it was going to be, but not knowing exactly like this would happen with it. I had hopes, but like, you know, this has been insane. It's been insane. You know, from the beginning, it's been so important to me to know the ending of the story and you know, to be working backwards from that. And so I guess that's to say that, yes, there is a plan in line narratively for Backrooms, and no, it has not been completed, and yes, the story is currently unfinished.
Because here's what I would say. Due to the fact that I enjoyed the film despite the problems I had with it, that to me is a sign that he does have potential here. I think he's got some really interesting ideas in world building. And yes, this is a continuation of the series he's done, but that is a big challenge. That's a big challenge to go from the YouTube series to building out a world for a feature film. Yeah, the fact that it's not garbage. I think as long as he can keep studio notes and producers as far away from his style as he can. Yeah. It's kind of funny. He says he doesn't know atmospheric horror because he has 2 other series of videos he's made that also do that well. The Weird Mall one, arguably much better than even the Backrooms. That is funny. He says that because I would say that that's actually his strength here. I would say his ability to create a world that feels new and something exciting to explore. I think that's what was the strength of the film.
Yeah, out of the risk of feeling like out of touch, I always have trouble. I don't feel like I have done enough to, I haven't gotten far enough away from this project to give proper advice on it yet, I feel. But I think like I can speak to my own experience and just say that like every technical trade I've learned along the way with all the YouTube work was all just through YouTube and mostly free software, and look around for like student licenses for things, and there's all sorts of ways to get programs and stuff. And like I think if you can identify what your specialty is, or like what you're most apt to be able to do well, I suppose. And I know that may be a hard thing to do because, like, you know, very common artistic trait is to think.
I guess my question will be, is he going to start writing his own stuff, or at least be credited as writer-director? Or is he only interested in finding scripts that he wants to direct? I saw a take that was pretty realistic, that the industry will do what the music industry did. Instead of taking a chance on new young talent, they'll rather go for people with already established followings like Obsession and Backrooms directors. Yeah, I think when I saw Obsession and then Backrooms, more so Obsession, it ignited a little nugget of excitement in me where I was like, ooh, are we back? Hold on a second. Are we back? Are we maybe going to be back? And then upon reflection, I think one, that the talent coming through this YouTube pipeline is noticeably also white and male. And that's a whole other can of worms. And I don't know if I'm going to get into that tonight. But this is not to take away from the success and talent of these white male YouTuber turned filmmakers, but it is kind of serving as a reminder that the barriers in the traditional industries are not falling away from there now being these alternative routes. That convo was started on Twitter and people got so mad because people do not hold space for multiple things to be true, and also because they see that as a dig on these filmmakers when it's not a personal dig. It's not coming after individuals. It's talking about the structure of these industries. It's talking about the type of people who have less barriers in the way towards success. Also, people who've kind of made these films their personalities. Again, yeah, so then they take it personally where they're like, oh, so you're saying that I'm a piece of shit. It's like, no, nobody is saying that. Nobody is saying that. We're just pointing out that even in alternative industries to the traditional ones, that there's still hierarchies, that there's still barriers. Problem is how gatekeepers work. Even if you have the follows and talent, it's hard as a woman or POC.
It's not well enough ever, and I feel the same, and I think it's pretty common. But I think if you can try to be objective about it, like what is something you can achieve in a, with the resources you have, but then achieve it to like the maximum potential of that idea. Sort of like how with my backroom stuff, I can do CG environments, not very good realistic CG humans, but if I put them in hazmat suits, it makes sense narratively, and so the narrative kind of works around that.
It's like when you're talking about a pipeline, a new pipeline, you have to also address who has access to said pipeline. And even with these new avenues that are a way to bypass the traditional structures, they still themselves have structures. And let's not forget who is emblematic of YouTube, and that is Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast, that has absolutely contributed to the to problems on YouTube as far as like what the standards are and how that pipeline looks. It's time for Mr. Beast feature film. Yes.
But also you don't have to deal with the uncanny valley of the faces. So you kind of just try not to, I guess,
agree.
overextend, or don't worry about overextending. Play to what you know you can do, I guess.
It's beautiful. Am I right?
Hello?
And look, YouTube, like Twitch, is a platform that caters to men. There was a 4-part investigative series called Who Killed the Female YouTube Star? And basically it exposes the reality that YouTube was not built on equal footing. And let's not forget that the YouTube founders, part of the reason for starting YouTube was because they couldn't find a video of Janet Jackson's shirt being exposed, or Janet Jackson's shirt being ripped down by Justin Timberlake, exposing her nipple. #Nipplegate. And so they wanted to create a platform, a video platform where videos like Nipplegate would be easily accessed and shared. So it's definitely an issue where, like, even when women can break through on YouTube, being more visible brings a cost. And there are the biases and issues with they're like, basically YouTube does not exist in a vacuum outside of the rest of society. So biases that exist in society absolutely appear on a platform like YouTube. And the status quo naturally bleeds into people's subconscious. So you'll see patterns and grassroots pipelines. Yeah, I mean, there's a bias against female creators that they just make lifestyle and silly content. And there's not genuinely any exciting, innovative, creative expression. Like there are a lot of biases that exist for marginalized creators on the platform. And so the structure reinforces those biases. But the problem is that when you try and have any type of, when you try and speak from any type of analytical view like this, people will say, oh, so you hate Kane Parsons. Like, so you think that he should die and that he should not ever get to make a movie. And it's like, we're not talking about individuals. We're talking about the total system. Funniest part is that we got David F. Sandberg, Dan Trachtenberg, Bo Burnham moving first from YouTube to the movie theater, but this new generation was self-taught exclusively on YouTube for YouTube. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely examples of millennials who were early to YouTube, but YouTube was not necessarily their training ground. Whereas for Gen Z, people like Kane Parsons, they exclusively came up on a platform like YouTube. You didn't escape the matrix, it recalibrated around. Yes.